Lines and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on qresearch or qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Board's May 20th, 2026. Good morning and welcome back to Qnotables 4 a.m. Talking Points Live. Today's show starts with a public health alert, then moves straight into the 2026 primary battlefield, election integrity fights, foreign power moves, federal crime cases, cultural pressure points, tech layoffs, military readiness, and a closing look at what all of it means. From Ebola briefings to Trump-backed primary wins, from Georgia election disputes to China-Russia coordination, from child rescue operations to AI billboards telling companies to stop hiring humans, the headlines are moving fast. Let's get into it. Top story, Ebola alert. Health officials hold live briefing as outbreak concerns rise. Health officials are tracking an Ebola outbreak involving the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. Confirmed cases have been reported, and many more suspected cases remain under investigation. The CDC has also confirmed one infected American who was exposed while working in Congo. Containment, contact tracing, and quick medical response are now the focus. Ebola is not a routine public health story. It is a serious disease with a high fatality risk when not contained early. Officials are watching the region closely, and the response will determine whether this remains localized or becomes a broader emergency. Domestic Politics Campaign 2026 primary night results roll in across 6 states. Primary night brought results across Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, Idaho, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. Voters selected nominees in key races that will help shape the 2026 midterm battlefield. Kentucky delivered some of the biggest headlines, Georgia saw important election process fights, and Pennsylvania, Alabama, Idaho, and Oregon all added movement to the national map. The 2026 midterm cycle is now fully underway, and both parties are moving from early positioning into real electoral combat. Trump-backed candidates score, key primary wins. President Trump's endorsements played a major role on primary night, with several Trump-backed candidates coming out on top. The clearest example came in Kentucky, where Ed Gallrein defeated Congressman Thomas Massie after Trump backed Gallrein. The message inside the Republican Party is clear. Trump's endorsement remains one of the strongest forces in GOP primary politics. Candidates who have his support gain instant visibility, instant credibility with the base, and a major advantage in crowded or contested races. Ed Gallrein defeats Thomas Massie in Kentucky, 04 primary. In Kentucky's 4th Congressional District, Ed Gallrein defeated incumbent Congressman Thomas Massie in the Republican primary. Gallrein, a Trump-backed candidate and former Navy SEAL, knocked off one of the most independent Republican voices in Congress. The race became a direct test of Trump's influence after Massie broke with the president on several major issues. Gallrein's win sends a strong signal. Republican voters in that district chose Trump's direction over Massie's independent brand. Thomas Massie concedes after Trump-backed challenge. Thomas Massie has conceded after losing the Kentucky 4th District Republican primary to Ed Gallrein. Massie had served in Congress for years and built a reputation as a libertarian-leaning conservative willing to challenge party leadership. This time, that independence was not enough to survive a Trump-backed primary challenge. Gallrein's victory closes a major chapter in Kentucky Republican politics and gives Trump allies another high-profile win heading into the midterm cycle. Andy Barr wins GOP nomination for McConnell's Senate seat. In Kentucky, Trump-backed Andy Barr won the Republican nomination for the Senate seat being vacated by Mitch McConnell. That race marks a major shift in Kentucky politics as the McConnell era moves toward its end. Barr now becomes the Republican nominee for one of the most watched Senate contests of the cycle. His win also shows that Trump's influence in Kentucky extends beyond House races and into the Senate battlefield. Trump and First Lady deliver remarks at congressional picnic. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump delivered remarks at the congressional picnic, continuing a long-running Washington tradition that brings lawmakers, families, and the White House together in a more informal setting. Even ceremonial events carry political weight in a tense election year. The administration used the moment to speak directly to members of Congress outside the usual committee rooms, hearings, and media fights. It was a softer setting, but still part of the larger political picture. First Lady's Fostering the Future Act passes the House. The House unanimously passed the Fostering the Future Act, legislation championed by First Lady Melania Trump. The bill focuses on helping foster youth transition into adulthood through better support, opportunity, and long-term stability. With unanimous House passage, the bill now moves forward with bipartisan momentum. In a Washington climate where almost everything becomes a fight, this was one of the rare measures to move through with broad agreement. Trump and Lawler set to tout SALT tax break in New York. President Trump is expected to travel to New York to highlight changes to the SALT deduction cap alongside Congressman Mike Lawler. The SALT issue is especially important in high-tax states like New York, where families have pushed for more relief on state and local tax deductions. Lawler has been closely tied to the SALT fight, and the visit puts tax policy directly into the midterm conversation. For voters in high-tax districts, this is not theory. It affects household budgets. Republicans defeat Gallego amendment. Republicans defeated an amendment from Senator Ruben Gallego aimed at pushing back on the Justice Department's new anti-weaponization fund. The fund was created to compensate people who say they were harmed by political misuse of government power. Supporters frame the fund as accountability for abuse. The amendment fight shows how quickly the fund has become a major political and legal flashpoint. The core question now is who qualifies, who decides, and how claims will be handled. VP Vance asked whether January 6th, defendants can apply for weaponization fund. Vice President J.D. Vance and Justice Department officials are facing questions about whether January 6th defendants can apply for compensation through the anti-weaponization fund. DOJ says the fund will process claims from people who say they were harmed by political weaponization of government power. During questioning, officials left the door open to case-by-case review. That means the fund could become one of the most watched programs in Washington, especially among those who believe federal power was used unevenly after January 6th. VP Vance says DOJ is investigating Ilhan Omar. Vice President J.D. Vance says the Justice Department is looking into allegations involving Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Vance framed the issue as part of a broader push for equal justice under the law. Omar's office has denied allegations against her in the past, but Vance's statement puts the issue back into national focus. The next question is whether DOJ confirms public action, releases findings, or allows the matter to remain in the political spotlight without formal charges. Cotton and senators urged Trump to eliminate UNRWA. Funding Senator Tom Cotton and 24 Republican colleagues sent a letter urging President Trump to work with the United Nations to dismantle UNRWA and eliminate its budget. The senators argue the agency has employed individuals tied to Hamas and other terrorist groups. They say U.S. money should not flow, directly or indirectly, into any agency with terror-linked personnel. The fight over UNRWA is now another front in the larger debate over foreign aid, terrorism, and taxpayer accountability. Federal Task Force announces 15-city anti-Semitism tour. The Justice Department's Federal Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism announced a 15-city national awareness and action tour. DOJ says the effort is aimed at increasing reporting, strengthening law enforcement coordination, and confronting anti-Semitic incidents across the country. The tour includes universities and communities that have seen elevated tensions since the October 7th attacks in Israel. The move signals that anti-Semitism enforcement is becoming a visible federal priority. U.S. bishops to consecrate America to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. U.S. Catholic bishops are preparing to consecrate America to the Sacred Heart of Jesus for the nation's 250th anniversary. The act is religious, symbolic, and national in scope. Supporters see it as a call to repentance, unity, and spiritual renewal at a time of deep division. As America approaches its semi-quincentennial, religious leaders are asking what kind of nation the country wants to be.
At shop.isitwaya.com, everything you buy supports Acun.top, the place where people talk freely no matter what. Check out our Acun Honey Pot, a jar of yummy honey that's as strong as your voice. Put it on toast or in tea. It's not just honey, it's freedom in every bite. Then there's Acun Butter, a smooth handmade skin cream that makes you feel good while you fight for what's right. Awesome wood and pieces for display only. Hang them up or set them out. They're for showing off a coon's tough spirit. Want to help even more? Get a proto membership. So go to shop.istheway.com now and grab some goodies. Help a.coon.top keep free speech alive, and let's keep the ideas flowing loud and free.
All reports can be found on QResearch or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Board's May 20th, 2026. Election Integrity, Georgia Election Fight, Candidates. Sue Secretary of State, a Georgia election lawsuit drew attention after Republican candidates sought access to the state's election night operations area. The fight centers on election transparency, observer access, and how results are received and reported. Georgia remains one of the most heavily watched election states in the country. Every dispute over procedure becomes national news because the state has been central to the election integrity debate for years. This case adds another layer to that fight. Cobb County Voting Problems Force. 11. Precincts to stay open. Late in Cobb County, Georgia, technical issues disrupted voting at several precincts during the primary election. Election officials deployed additional check-in equipment, and voting times were extended at select locations. Local reports say 11 precincts were affected. The issue adds fresh scrutiny to Georgia's election process. For voters, the principle is simple. Technical problems should not interfere with ballot access, especially during a high-stakes primary night. RNC announces election lawsuit push across 32 states. RNC chair Joe Gruters says the party is pursuing a major election law strategy, with 130 lawsuits across 32 states and more legal action expected. The stated goal is to challenge election procedures before November, not after ballots are counted. The announcement shows election law is now a central battlefield in the 2026 cycle. Rules, deadlines, voter rolls, ballot handling, and observer access can all shape the outcome before Election Day arrives. California woman accused of paying homeless people to register to vote. Federal prosecutors say Brenda Lee Brown Armstrong, a longtime petition circulator in Los Angeles, agreed to plead guilty to paying people on Skid Row to register to vote and sign ballot petitions. DOJ says Armstrong gathered voter registration forms and offered cash payments to people who were not registered. The charge carries a possible sentence of up to 5 years in prison. The case puts California voter registration practices back under federal scrutiny. NAACP urges boycott over voting rights. Fight. The NAACP is urging athletes and fans to boycott athletic programs at public universities over voting rights and redistricting disputes. The move puts sports, race, politics, and election law into the same national conversation. The message is aimed at applying public pressure through athletics and public institutions. The larger fight is over how election maps are drawn, who gains political advantage, and whether civil rights groups can move the debate through economic and cultural pressure. Democrat D as threatened charges against ICE agents at polling places. Some Democrat district attorneys are threatening to charge ICE agents who look for illegal immigrants at polling places. The conflict creates a direct clash between immigration enforcement and election access. Supporters of enforcement argue that immigration law should not stop at the edge of a voting location. Opponents argue that federal presence near polling places can intimidate voters. The issue now sits at the intersection of border policy, voting rights, and local prosecutorial power. International conflict and global power. Putin and Xi meet in China for major signing ceremony. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping met in Beijing for a high-profile signing ceremony, reinforcing the growing China-Russia partnership. The two leaders praised their nations' relationship and oversaw cooperation agreements covering trade, technology, energy, and media. Beijing and Moscow are presenting a united front while the rest of the world watches the balance of power shift. This is one of the clearest geopolitical signals of the day. Meloni meets Modi in Italy as Europe and India strengthen ties. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Italy, continuing the relationship between Rome and New Delhi. The meeting comes as India builds deeper ties with European partners on trade, security, technology, and diplomacy. India's influence continues to grow, and Italy is working to strengthen connections beyond Europe's usual power centers. UK House of Commons takes center stage in latest political developments. The UK House of Commons continues a busy week, with debate tied to the King's speech and major national issues. Parliamentary business includes defence readiness, economic growth, energy security, and legislation involving steel undertakings. For Britain, the week is about priorities: defence, industry, energy, and whether Parliament can deliver on the government's stated agenda. The Commons is setting the tone for the new session. EU restores fuller trade ties with Syria. The European Union has moved to restore fuller trade ties with Syria by ending the partial suspension of a cooperation agreement that dated back to 2011. The Council says the step is meant to strengthen relations as Syria tries to rebuild after years of war. Europe is reopening a diplomatic and economic door while still dealing with security concerns, migration pressure, and Syria's unstable political future. Treasury targets flotilla organizers and Hamas support networks. The Treasury Department announced sanctions targeting flotilla organizers and Muslim Brotherhood-linked networks accused of supporting Hamas. Treasury says the action blocks property and financial interests under U.S. jurisdiction and warns foreign financial institutions against assisting designated individuals. Secretary Scott Bessent said Treasury will keep cutting off Hamas support networks wherever they operate. Israeli forces seize boats from global Sumud flotilla. Israeli forces reportedly seized dozens of boats from the global Sumud flotilla as tensions continued around Gaza-bound maritime activism. The flotilla movement says it is trying to challenge restrictions and draw attention to Gaza. Israel argues flotilla efforts can undermine security operations and support hostile networks. The incident sits directly inside the larger Israel-Hamas conflict, where humanitarian claims, terrorism concerns, and international pressure all collide. CENTCOM says Iran-backed groups are cut off from weapons support. CENTCOM reported that Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis are being cut off from Iran's weapons supply and support. That would mark a major shift in the regional battlefield. Iran-backed proxy forces depend on money, weapons, logistics, and intelligence to keep pressure on Israel, U.S. forces, and shipping lanes. Cutting those supply lines weakens their reach and limits future attacks. Russia warns it will respond to nuclear tests. Russia says it will respond proportionately if any country conducts nuclear tests. The warning comes as global arms control pressure rises and major powers continue signaling strategic readiness. Moscow is making clear that it will not ignore any move it sees as escalation. The statement adds more tension to an already unstable security environment, especially as major powers modernize weapons and prepare for future conflict. Russia and Belarus conduct nuclear drills. Russia and Belarus are conducting nuclear drills designed to simulate a response to outside aggression. The exercises are part of a broader pattern of military signaling from Moscow and Minsk. These drills are meant to show readiness, deterrence, and coordination between the two allies. They also raise concerns across Europe, where every nuclear exercise is viewed through the lens of the Ukraine war and wider NATO-Russia tensions. AFRICOM conducts counterterrorism strike in Nigeria. U.S. Africa Command says it conducted counterterrorism efforts in coordination with Nigeria against an ISIS fighter camp. The operation highlights the continuing threat of ISIS-linked networks outside the Middle East. Nigeria and the surrounding region have long faced extremist violence, kidnappings, and attacks on civilians. U.S. involvement shows Washington is still working with African partners to disrupt terrorist groups before they expand further. Trump wants to resettle more persecuted white South Africans. President Trump reportedly wants to resettle another 10,000 persecuted white South Africans in the United States. The proposal follows years of debate over farm attacks, racial violence, land policy, and whether Afrikaners qualify for refugee-style protection. Supporters say the U.S. should protect people facing targeted persecution. The issue now sits at the crossroads of immigration policy, human rights, asylum rules, and political identity. Crime, justice, and public safety. Operation Iron Pursuit rescues over 200 child victims. The FBI and Justice Department announced results from Operation Iron Pursuit, a nationwide child exploitation crackdown that ran through April. Officials say more than 200 child victims were located, and more than 350 alleged child sex abuse offenders were arrested. All 56 FBI field offices and U.S. attorneys' offices took part in the effort. FBI Director Kash Patel said the Bureau is working around the clock to break networks of child abusers across the country. DOJ healthcare fraud case, Violetta Malian convicted. The Justice Department announced action in the case of Violetta Malian, a Glendale physician accused in a major Medicare fraud scheme. Prosecutors said the case involved bogus Botox-related claims billed to Medicare, including claims tied to dates when patients were allegedly traveling, incarcerated, or when the clinic was closed. Malian faced 9 wire fraud counts and 3 obstruction counts. The case is another example of federal investigators targeting healthcare fraud that drains public programs and hits taxpayers directly. U.S. charges 7 Chinese executives over alleged illegal shipping cartel. The Justice Department has charged 7 Chinese executives and 4 major shipping container companies in an alleged cartel scheme. Prosecutors say the companies conspired to restrict supply and fix prices during the COVID period, affecting the global shipping market and raising costs for consumers. The case lands at the intersection of supply chains, China, antitrust law, and pandemic-era price pressure. Retired Air Force Major indicted in child exploitation case. A retired Air Force major has been indicted on charges related to the sexual exploitation of children. The case adds to a growing list of federal child exploitation prosecutions being announced across the country. The serious nature of the allegations makes this a public safety and accountability story, especially because the accused previously held a position of trust in the military. Prosecutors now move forward with the case in court. German pediatrician charged in 130 child sexual abuse cases. A pediatrician in Germany has been charged in 130 cases involving rape and other forms of sexual abuse targeting children. The case is severe because of both the number of allegations and the position of trust held by the accused. When abuse allegations involve medical professionals, the damage goes beyond the individual case. It strikes at public trust in institutions designed to protect children. This is one of the darkest crime stories in the batch. San Diego mosque shooting livestream under FBI review. The FBI is reviewing footage connected to a deadly mosque shooting in San Diego after suspects allegedly live-streamed the attack. Investigators are examining motive, planning, online activity, and extremist ideology. The case includes claims involving symbols, manifestos, and social media behavior. The public safety concern is clear. Online radicalization, live violence, and organized planning remain major threats. Teen takeover chaos. Hundreds brawl at New York Park, Rochester. New York saw chaos after hundreds of teenagers gathered for back-to-back teen takeover incidents at Ontario Beach Park. Reports say more than 400 teens were involved, with videos showing fights and disorder across the area. Officials say the gatherings were organized through social media. Rochester leaders are increasing security ahead of Memorial Day weekend. The story shows how fast online organizing can turn into real-world disorder. Pink Panther costume abduction attempt, reported in Virginia. In Fredericksburg, Virginia, police responded to reports of a man in a Pink Panther costume attempting to abduct multiple children near a school bus stop. The bizarre nature of the report does not make it less serious. Parents are being reminded to watch bus stops, report suspicious behavior, and teach children to move toward trusted adults when approached by strangers. Police investigation and community awareness are both critical. Cambridge Council votes to disable gunshot detectors. The Cambridge City Council voted 5-2 to disable gunshot detection technology. Supporters of the move raised concerns about civil liberties, surveillance, and the impact on minority and migrant communities. Critics argue the technology helps police respond faster when shots are fired. The vote reflects a growing divide in local government, whether public safety tools are necessary protection or another layer of surveillance. Residents will now see the results in real time. F-16s intercept civilian aircraft near Washington, D.C. F-16 fighter jets intercepted a civilian aircraft that violated restricted airspace around the national capital region. Airspace around Washington, D.C. is among the most sensitive in the country, and unauthorized aircraft can trigger a rapid military response. Officials use these intercepts to identify the aircraft, redirect the pilot, and protect national security. Restricted airspace violations near the capital are treated seriously and immediately. Los Angeles County wildfire forces evacuations. A major wildfire in Los Angeles County forced more than 10,000 homes to evacuate as flames spread through the area. Southern California remains highly vulnerable to fast-moving fires, especially when dry conditions and winds line up. Fire crews work to protect neighborhoods while emergency officials pushed evacuation orders. For residents, the danger is immediate. Leave early, follow official instructions, and do not wait until escape routes are already threatened. 5.9 magnitude earthquake hits near coast of Peru. A 5.9 magnitude earthquake struck near the coast of Peru. Peru sits along the Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most active earthquake zones in the world. Quakes in that region are common, but each event still brings risk depending on depth, location, and nearby population centers. Officials monitor for damage, aftershocks, and any possible coastal threat after stronger seismic activity.
Every voice matters. The power of free speech is more important than ever. Imagine a place where you can share your thoughts freely, explore new ideas, and engage in meaningful conversations anonymously. With online anonymity, you can express yourself without fear of judgment. It's about freedom, creativity, and connection. Join the conversation that matters. Embrace your voice. Celebrate your freedom. Visit 8kun.top today. That's 8kun.top.
All reports can be found on QResearch or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Board's May 20th, 2026 Culture, Health Policy, and Public Institutions Accessory Report raises questions over antidepressants and mass shootings. A 2024 report is raising questions about SSRI, antidepressants, and mass shootings. The issue remains one of the most difficult public health and public safety debates in the country. The central question is whether warning signs, side effects, medication history, and mental health treatment failures are being fully examined after major attacks. This is not about labeling every patient as dangerous. It is about whether investigators are asking every necessary question when lives are lost. Colorado bill would require abortion medication access on college campuses. Colorado lawmakers advanced a bill requiring higher education institutions with student health centers to provide abortion medication services on campus. If a college has an on-campus pharmacy, the bill also requires abortion medication to be available to enrolled students. Supporters call it healthcare access. Critics see it as forcing colleges into the abortion industry. The bill places Colorado directly in the national fight over abortion access, campus policy, and taxpayer-supported institutions. New York governor signs vaccine access bills. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed 2 bills aimed at protecting vaccine access in the state. One measure allows pharmacists to administer COVID-19 vaccines to children ages 2 to 18, expanding authority that was previously limited to adults. The governor framed the bills as a response to federal uncertainty over vaccine policy. The move shows blue states are building their own public health rules as the national vaccine debate continues. UK pastor arrested after public preaching. A UK pastor was reportedly arrested after public preaching that included criticism of Islamic violence. The case is being framed as a free speech and religious liberty issue. Supporters say Christian preaching should not be treated as a crime. The broader question is where a nation draws the line between protected religious speech and speech the state decides to police. U.S. Marine revives forgotten verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. A patriotic clip is drawing attention after a Marine performed a lesser-known verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. Most Americans only hear the first verse, but Francis Scott Key's original poem included additional verses written after the defense of Fort McHenry. The renewed attention is a reminder that the national anthem is not just a song before ball games. It is a wartime poem about survival, sacrifice, faith, and the flag still standing. UN climate scenario shift undercuts worst-case forecasts. A climate modeling shift is drawing attention after scientists moved away from some of the most extreme warming scenarios used in past reports. The worst-case pathway is now being treated as less likely, while the best-case pathway is also slipping out of reach. The key point is that some apocalyptic projections are being downgraded, but the policy fight continues. Climate models, energy policy, and public messaging remain under heavy scrutiny. Tech, media, and economy LinkedIn. Layoffs hit California as tech job pressure continues. LinkedIn is preparing to lay off hundreds of California workers as part of a broader workforce reduction. Reports say more than 600 California jobs are affected, with many cuts hitting the Bay Area. The Microsoft-owned company is reducing staff while reorganizing teams and focusing on growth areas. The layoffs come despite continued revenue growth, showing the pressure inside the tech sector as companies chase efficiency, automation, and leaner operations. NPR cuts newsroom. Jobs after funding loss. NPR is cutting newsroom jobs after federal funding losses and an expected drop in sponsorship revenue. The layoffs show that media organizations are still under major financial pressure, even large national outlets. Public media is facing the same hard math as private newsrooms: fewer dollars, changing audiences, rising competition, and weaker public trust. The result is another round of cuts in an industry already struggling to hold its ground. Stop hiring humans. Billboards spark backlash. Billboards reading "Stop hiring humans" are appearing in U.S. cities and sparking public reaction. The message appears designed to promote automation and artificial intelligence, but many workers see it as a direct insult during an already uncertain job market. The campaign shows the cultural fight now surrounding AI. Companies want efficiency. Workers fear replacement. The backlash proves people are not ready to be written off by machines. Nancy Mace secures drone funding for Joint Base Charleston. Congresswoman Nancy Mace helped secure $1.9 million for drone capabilities at Joint Base Charleston. The funding is tied to modernizing military readiness and improving unmanned systems. Drones are now central to surveillance, logistics, and battlefield operations, and U.S. bases are racing to keep up with the pace of change. The investment shows how drone warfare has moved from a future concept into normal defense planning. CH-53 E heavy lift capability highlighted. The CH-53E Super Stallion remains one of America's heavy lift workhorses. The aircraft is built to move troops, equipment, and heavy external loads in demanding environments. The platform can carry massive payloads and support rapid delivery from amphibious ships and forward positions. Heavy lift aviation remains critical for rapid military logistics, disaster response, and battlefield mobility. Closing segment. Tonight's show shows a country and a world under pressure from every direction. At home, primary voters are reshaping the political map, Trump-backed candidates are proving their strength, and election procedures remain under the microscope in Georgia, California, and across 32 states. Overseas, Putin and Xi are tightening their partnership, Italy and India are strengthening ties, Syria is being pulled back into European trade channels, and the Middle East remains locked in conflict through Hamas, Iran-backed networks, sanctions, and flotilla clashes. On public safety, the headlines are severe. Child victims rescued, sex abuse charges, violent youth mobs, mosque shooting investigations, wildfire evacuations, and federal fraud cases. In tech and media, layoffs, AI pressure, drone funding, and public trust problems show that the economy is changing faster than many Americans can absorb. The day's message is simple. Watch the systems, watch the money, watch the courts, watch the borders, and watch what powerful people do when they think the public is distracted. That is the show for this morning. Share it, subscribe, and stay locked in.
Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com.
That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.